Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ray Tampa Podcast. Our podcast is new, our podcast is bold, and truth is our guiding principle. But political correctness is out the door. We will tell it like it is. My name is Ray Tampa, and I'm the host of the Ray Tampa Podcast. We have in our studio today two very intelligent, talented gentlemen, Mr. Russell Cato and Mr. Jamie Wilson III. Today, we're going to discuss the subjects related to a previous podcast. Today's podcast is entitled, Mayor Welch Needs to Listen Up, Part 2. I'm going to read the article, and we'll have a discussion following the reading of the article. Here's the article. While attending an event at the Center for Health Equity, I took note of a statement made by Jackie Assis, president of the League of Women Voters, during her presentation. She said, "I love this city so much that I insist on the right to criticize her." Again, quote, "I love this city so much that I insist on the right to criticize her," end of quote. She happened to be sitting next to me at the table, and I shared with her the fact that I wrote that quote down in my phone. Very important. Former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was conducting an interview with New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on MSNBC. The Congresswoman made some very interesting statements during that interview. One particular statement really caught my attention when she said, quote, "Holding politicians accountable is fundamental to our roles," end of quote. Well said, Congresswoman. The two statements above, quoted statements that is, encapsulates the very basis for the following article. About a month ago, we did a podcast entitled Mayor Welch Needs to Listen Up. A reporter and photographer from the Tampa Bay Times were in the studio while we taped the podcast. Later, a reporter from Bay News 9 called and asked for an interview. The Bay News 9 reporter obviously interviewed Mayor Welch later on that evening. This is when some disturbing developments occurred. Mayor Welch stated that he said, quote, "no," end of quote, to our support request for the nonprofit community resource. He went on to say that, quote, "some people can't accept no as an answer," end of quote. This is a totally untrue statement because the mayor never gave any feedback, none whatsoever. He simply ignored us. Also, during his TV interview, Mayor Welch attempted to diminish the importance of people wanting to meet with him by saying, quote, "I don't have time to shoot the breeze like I used to," end of quote. This was grossly disrespectful to all of his constituents. Who asked him to shoot the breeze? One person who knows the mayor extremely well laughed at that statement and said, quote, "Ken Welch doesn't even know how to shoot the breeze," end of quote. Furthermore, our previous podcast stated that the quote, proof will be in the pudding, end of quote, as it relates to all the flowery talk about inclusive this and inclusive that. Mayor Welch said that he wants inclusive practices and procedures baked into city government, end of quote. He also said, quote, I want to make sure everyone is on the same playing field, end of quote. Now here comes the kicker. Mayor Welch made the statement that he rejected supporting the nonprofit community resource because it did not meet his criteria for community impact. Nobody we know of ever heard of this before. Nobody ever heard of this criteria concern. It seems that statement and others were made for the TV camera. On Thursday, July 13th, 2023, we happened to read a very long article in a community newspaper written by Mayor Welch. It appears that he and his staff put a lot of thought and effort into convincing the African-American community that he is the best thing since sliced bread. Good try, Mayor. Good try. For those of us who know better, we ask that the mayor keep working on it because we want him to succeed. I want to say it again. We want him to succeed. Finally, Mayor, you still have an opportunity to help the struggling resource that was requested of you months ago. Thank you. Well, as far as my co-hosts are concerned, I want to ask you to give me an opportunity to share a couple of comments that I made in reference to one of the points made by the mayor. If you don't mind, let me get to what I want to share. And then we'll go ahead and bounce a lot of discussion off of it. I want to go to that statement the mayor made about this resource. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and identify the resource and not refer to it as a community resource. There you go. We're talking about this station right here, 99.1 FM, The Bird. Very important community resource. So we're talking about this radio station that the mayor said does not meet his criteria for community impact. So I want to go through some of the things that I feel debunks that statement totally. First, nobody has ever heard of his criteria for community impact. We believe that was only made for the TV camera, as stated earlier. Number two, radio station 99.1 FM, The Bird, definitely has a strong impact on our community for a number of reasons. Can it get stronger? Yes. By all means, yes. Number three, several of the radio personalities are longtime veterans of the radio from the days of WRXB, Mr. Eugene Danzy's station. There are veterans such as Tony Charles and Sister Diane Hughes, to name a couple. Number four, St. Pete's first Muslim council member, has been long associated with the radio station by broadcasting his acclaimed Breakfast Club program. Number 5, well-known and longtime pastor, Bishop, Dr. Manuel Sykes, has a program on the station. Number 6, prior to the passing of Reverend Watson Haynes, the Pinellas County Urban League sponsored their own very significant program entitled, quote, Pinellas Strong, weekly for 9 months. Caprice Edmond, school board member, aired regular ads for her successful school board campaign. Renee Flowers aired regular ads for her successful county commission campaign. Even you, Ken Welch, aired ads for your successful mayoral campaign. A couple of days before the actual day of voting, Ken Welch had a very long caravan of cars supporting his campaign. Welch rode in the lead car, and even before putting on his seatbelt, he reached over to turn on the radio to 99.1 FM, The Bird, to listen to his ads.
Interesting.
Very interesting. The only political podcast dedicated to telling it like it is in our community airs weekly. This program, the Ray Tampa Podcast. The station has DJ Super Dave with his old school music program for 3 hours a day, 2 days a week. The station has dynamic DJ Mike Summers with his Soulful Nights program, 2 evenings a week. And there's so much more. Even that, with support from various segments of our community, I'm sure the station could thrive and be a much more impactful resource. So the question is, what is Ken Welch talking about? All right, guys. Let's hear it.
Well, you did answer one of my questions. Did he spell out his criteria? And obviously he didn't.
He did not.
That was yeah, so that's one of the big problems I see too. If you're gonna deny certain entities that's trying to get help, and you never spelled out your criteria, then that's an untruth.
It definitely is.
Mhm.
I didn't want to say he lied.
Mhm.
I still don't want to say that,
Mhm.
but it is an untruth.
Right. It wasn't visible. As far as this thing of shooting the breeze,
Yes, I want to hear it. Yeah.
you just have to remember the people, the constituents that were very effective in getting you elections, getting you elected. You reached out to people when you were trying to get to this place of being the mayor. And you do owe them a conversation, because a lot of these key people that are reaching out to you,
Yes.
they're not reaching out to you for themselves. It's to help. It's because of other issues in the community. Because they feel that they have some felt that they had a direct line or at least a close relationship, so they can convey some of these issues in the community to you. But if you're shutting everybody away and want to call it shooting the breeze, I don't think that's right. It's not fair. And I know that your time is probably limited now. And I'm sure that you were busy during the campaign, but you made an effort to sit or be with the people that you knew could get you where you needed to be. So take that same energy and help your community and listen.
Excellent. Excellent. What you say, Russ?
Well, one of the things I want to say, and I want to make sure that people understand us, that we are not trying to downplay Welch as a mayor and want him to fail. We're not trying to do that, Ray.
No.
And I want to make that extensively clear. What we are trying to do here is make things transparent.
Transparency.
That's what we're trying to do, Ray. That's all it is.
Accountability.
And I'm gonna stop right there.
Well, those are very important
Yeah.
points, and that's
Yeah.
enough. Enough said. Can we get transparency?
Yes.
Can we get accountability?
Yes.
And
Yes.
speaking to those 2 points,
Yeah.
I want to say this. During the midst of the Rick Baker versus Rick Kreisman campaign, I was at a picnic, Democratic Party picnic out on Walsingham Road. It was pretty well attended. Ken Welch came over to me and said, Ray, you're doing a good you're doing a great job with those articles. He was referring to the articles that I was writing weekly for the Bulletin News.
Mhm.
And because the articles were more or less pro-Kreisman and anti-Baker,
Mhm.
he felt that I was on point doing what I was doing. Now it seems the shoe is on a different foot, where I'm trying to bring transparency to another official. There's something wrong,
Yeah.
and it's not my problem. It's not my problem. We just want transparency and we want accountability.
Right. Sure.
Right. It's not just
Yeah.
coming from our podcast. This is stuff we're getting from people in the community.
It's correct.
So this is the community talking to you, Ken. This is not,
Yeah. Sure.
you're not being beat up on. It's just when you write an article about all of this, no one knew anything about this. This is just be more transparent about what you're doing. I mentioned something like a town hall or whatever. Just have a way of bringing it to the community. Because this looks like backpedaling based on the first podcast we did. Just get the information out there.
Yes. Yeah, and the article that he wrote in the community newspaper, well written,
Mhm.
well thought out,
Good article.
but it goes back to what I asked in a previous podcast about Ken Welch needing to listen up. There are people that are skeptical, and I indicated that I'm one of those individuals, skeptical. And I'm still skeptical. I'm still skeptical, even after reading what he had to say. Very long article. Because there are things that are of concern to me, very much concern. I want to put real faces, I can't put names, to the concerns that we've expressed on this podcast. These are real people, real individuals in our community. Now, after our first podcast, I heard that he has started reaching out to some of the individuals that he refused to reach out to prior to the podcast. That's great.
That's great.
That's what we want.
That's great. Right.
That's what we want.
Right.
One of the individuals made it personal to call me and tell me that he had gotten a call from the mayor's office asking for a meeting
Mhm.
within 3 or 4 days.
Very good.
I was happy to hear that.
Mhm.
I'm not aware of this other individual and his concern, but a very high-profile businessman shared with me someone he was aware of who had gotten a call from the mayor's office asking for a meeting.
Very good.
I still don't know what that was all about, but I trust what this individual said. So if he's now reaching out to the people who he claimed he didn't have time to reach out to, then we have done our job. We have done our job. And we're hoping that the mayor will continue doing his job
Right.
of not making his constituents feel ignored, unimportant.
And one of the things that he said, and that we're trying to get in, and he stated this, I want to make sure everyone is on the same page. That's what we're trying to do.
Mhm.
You see that?
Yeah.
That is accountability and transparency.
And Russ, like I said, sounds good.
Yeah, it does.
Sounds good. When he said so many things, they sounded good as well. Because when he said to us that he wanted everybody on the same playing field, he wanted policies and practices baked into city government
Yeah.
that relate to equity. When he said that he wanted to reach out to the community and make sure that the community understood what he wanted to do with those issues of accountability and transparency. My God, it sounds great. We hope he can follow through on it all.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to really do this podcast today because we didn't want it to look as though we were going tit for tat with the mayor. We discussed it.
Yeah.
And we're still not interested in tit for tat.
No. No.
But based on his article in the Challenger and the things that he said during his interview on Bay News 9, it's our obligation to offer some type of response. It's our hope that we don't have to do this again.
Mhm.
The key word, hope. We don't have to do this again because that's not what we're trying to do.
Right.
We're not trying to ramrod anything. We're not trying to be negative in our commentary. But it's not a matter of negativism. It's a matter of accountability.
Right.
Just like the opening statement, where it was stated that holding political figures accountable is fundamental
Yes.
to our roles.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
Another way of saying that is holding political figures accountable is critically important in our roles. So we're doing our job.
We're doing our job.
As we do this, I'm saying to myself, I'm hoping and wishing that he hears this, that he has a rebuttal to what we say.
Well, I don't want him to rebut it. I just want him to do his job.
But I just want that because here's what sometimes the community people look at. You beating up on a black guy now, a black man. That is not true.
And I'm glad you said that because I do have a rebuttal to that. Because I heard it.
Yeah, I heard it. That's what I'm saying. Now you got a black man, why are you beating up on? That is not what we're trying to do here.
If we have a black mayor, as we do, but that black mayor is ignoring residents. That black mayor is not returning calls to residents. That black mayor is pretending that many of us don't exist. He needs to be held accountable. Now, personally, I have criticized several mayors in the past, several. Personally, I don't agree with that. He's black, so don't say anything. My God, if he's behaving the way he has been behaving, then that's wrong. A person that I read our previous podcast to before we aired it said to me that I would be doing a disservice to the residents if we did not do that podcast. I would be doing a disservice to our residents if I did not do that podcast. And there were so many others that I read it to before we actually did the podcast. I can't name them, but they agreed, please do it. Please do it. I agree with what you're saying. It needs to be heard. So Ken Welch, it's not just for people disagreeing with you, as you stated on TV. Just 4 people is what he said, Jamie and Russ, that disagree with his administration. But when we try and tell Ken stuff, Ken said on TV that he didn't listen to us when we tried before he became mayor. The group of us that met with him and shared with him some concerns that we were hearing in the community. He said on TV, he remembered the meeting, but he didn't pay attention to what we were saying.
Out of all the other mayors, I hold him more accountable because number one, he's Black and understands the Black struggle. He grew up in the community.
It's a very good point.
So I mean, he knows the issues. He knows the issue. He wasn't always mayor, so he knows the issues. And I'm sure he had his complaints about what was going on in the city of St. Peter, Pinellas County. So not to beat up on him, but the issues that you probably personally complained of while living here, they're still here. They still exist. And that's pretty much what the citizens want. Now, I know, as I said, I know you can't get to everybody, and I know but the high profile people are, I guess, important, but the regular citizens are too. And a lot of these high profile people that are reaching out to you, like the preachers or whoever else, ex-politicians that are reaching out, that obviously was having some issues because you weren't returning their calls or getting back with them. They're speaking for regular residents that really don't have a voice. They're reaching out to you about situations, issues. So, take the time to, and I'm glad to hear that you are. Ray just mentioned that you have reached out to a few people. That's good. Just continue to do so and be more transparent, not when you think you're under fire. Just, make it an issue to be more transparent so that people can know what's upcoming, what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. Kind of like what you did in your article.
Excellent.
But you're under fire, that's why.
Excellent, excellent. All of us are aware of the discussions that were going on about the principal over at Lakewood High School. Very hot topic for a while, very hot topic. It was so hot that the principal at Lakewood has been moved. They have a new principal. I'm already impressed with what the new principal said she has done in the short period of time that she has been in that position. I'm going to read a quote that she said. And her name is Ms. Garcia. Ms. Garcia said, quote, "You're going to see me. You're going to hear me. You're going to get a response from me." Adding that she has planned many more events involving individual meetings with students, parents, teachers, and even town hall type events. This tells me that this leader at Lakewood High School really wants to connect with her stakeholders and the community, to hold the town hall meetings, to have individual meetings, group meetings, and to emphasize what she said in this quote. I applaud her. I wish her well. I want her to succeed. Just as we said we want Ken Welch to succeed.
Definitely, definitely.
And all it takes is for a mayor to make us feel like he wants to succeed.
I got one more thing to say. July 1st, they passed this gun law. I think the mayor's office and other organizations need to spell out this whole thing about people can open carry a gun. Felons, you cannot have a gun. Understand that. It's a trap. This is from our governor. It is a trap.
Jay, let me say this. We're gonna have a whole podcast on this when Sergeant Michael Hawkins comes
Okay.
back in town.
All right. Okay.
Whole podcast on this.
All right.
But at this time, I'm going to say to my co-host, thanks again for another excellent discussion. And I want to make sure that our audience knows how much we appreciate them tuning in to the Ray Tampa podcast each and every Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. on 99.1 FM, a very impactful radio station right here in our city. And we want to emphasize to each and every one of you, sponsorships are welcome. So with all of that being said, good evening.